Hello, this is Melanie Gorelnik, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the February 10th issue of the Toronto Sun on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The first story is FBI releases first images of possible suspect from Nancy Guthrie's porch by Danette Wilford. Federal authorities have released new video and images of a person of interest in the Nancy Guthrie abduction. The 84-year-old mother of Today co-host Savannah Guthrie was taken against her will from her Arizona home more than a week ago. Photos and footage from Nancy's front door security camera show a masked, gloved individual wearing a backpack and what appears to be a holstered gun on the front of the person's belt. The person also appears to have a mustache. One image shows the person with a flashlight in their mouth as they appear to be tampering with the camera, and again with a plant on the morning of Nancy's disappearance, according to FBI Director Kash Patel. Second ransom cutoff passes. A second ransom deadline for Nancy came and went on Monday, but the FBI said they are not aware of any contact between the family and her alleged kidnappers. A ransom note sent to TMZ and local Arizona TV stations demanded two separate sums: $4 million in Bitcoin that was due last Thursday, and if that was not met, the sum would be increased to $6 million on Monday at 5 p.m. local time. Thursday's deadline was not met, according to reports, and it is unclear if the $6 million payment was made on Monday. The people claiming to have kidnapped Nancy issued a chilling threat in their first ransom note. If the woman's family did not comply, TMZ's Harvey Levin told CNN late Monday. Levin then read one line from the note, quote, "It is in the best interest of anyone to have this completed as soon as possible." He added, "That's all I will say, but it is chilling when you read that sentence. It's short, and it is to the point." Levin also noted that he found it baffling that the money does not appear to have been settled, given that the Guthrie family said they were willing to pay. The FBI is not aware of any continued communication between the Guthrie family and suspected kidnappers, FBI Phoenix spokesperson Connor Hagan said in a statement. Search for Nancy now is in its 10th day. Nancy was seen on the night of January 31 after she was dropped off by a family member following a dinner. Police were called the following day after the mother of three failed to show up for church services. Authorities announced that they believed Nancy was taken against her will on February 3rd, with Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos confirming blood droplets on the porch of Nancy's Tucson home matched her DNA. As of February 8th, no suspects or persons of interest had been identified in Nancy's abduction, the Pima County Sheriff's Department shared on media, despite multiple pleas from her children, Savannah, Annie, and Cameron. The FBI is now offering a $50,000 reward for any information leading to Nancy's recovery or an arrest in the case. Savannah's latest plea. "We are at an hour of desperation," Savannah said in an Instagram video hours before Monday's ransom cutoff. "We believe that somehow, some way, Nancy is feeling these prayers and that God is lifting her even in this moment and in this darkest place," the NBC star continued. "We believe our mom is still out there." Savannah then begged viewers for their help in bringing their mom home safely. "We need your help. Law enforcement is working tirelessly around the clock, trying to bring her home, trying to find her. She was taken, and we don't know where, and we need your help," Savannah detailed. "So I'm coming on just to ask you, not just for your prayers, but no matter where you are, even if you're far from Tucson, if you see anything, you hear anything, If there's anything at all that seems strange to you, that you report to law enforcement. In the caption, Savannah added, "Please, bring her home. We need you. She needs you. All of you." Anyone with tips or leads is asked to call 1-800-CALL-FBI or the Pima County Sheriff's Department at 520-351-4900. There is a black and white still picture from the video camera, and you can see the person of interest. He's wearing a black jacket and like a ski mask. You can just see his eyes. There's holes for his eyes. And where his mouth is, he's holding a flashlight. And his hand is close to the camera, holding some shrubbery that he's trying to put over the lens. Photo credit goes to Kash Patel via X. That story was FBI releases first images of possible suspect from Nancy Guthrie's porch by Danette Wilford. The next story is Americans Hand Canada Worst Defeat in Olympic History by Rob Longley. Milan. It's been building for a while now, this formidable red, white, and blue print that is threatening to squash Canada's dominance in Olympic women's hockey. And after 60 minutes of one-sided play and a 5-0 blowout U.S. win on Tuesday night at the Santa Giulia Ice Arena, that demoralizing moment may have arrived. It was American dominance by every measure. A thorough beatdown from the opening puck drop as an at times plodding group of Canadians had no answer for the speed relentlessly storming their way. By the time it mercifully ended, the Canadians had suffered their most lopsided defeat in their brilliant Olympic history, a humiliating thumping at the hands of their bitter rivals. And now, a Canadian team that was minus its injured captain, Marie-Philippe Poulin, on Tuesday must regroup, and do so not just in a hurry, but in a big way. If not, their gold medal defense will go meekly into the Italian winter. The fact is, this transformation has been coming for a while now. You try to decipher why a game like that happens. Canadian coach Troy Ryan said of the carnage, "I think the speed and the tempo was obviously an upgrade from our first couple of games. We looked like we didn't have a ton of confidence in our decision making. Just making plays that you can't make against a team as good and as skilled as the U.S." The Americans extended their winning streak to 7 in a row, a once unimaginable stretch given both the intensity of the rivalry and the historical results. The confidence that Team USA had in making such a statement came through loud and clear. For the rattled Canadians, unless there's a quick rebound, a reckoning seems on its way. How much has the talent swung USA's way? Quietly, Canadian officials had seen this development coming for quite some time. A shift in the women's hockey power structure that goes deeper than just results. Prior to the tournament, when we asked Ryan about the glut of young, speedy American players, he was transparent in the role it placed in Olympic roster building. When you look at some of the young talent that the Americans have, if that young talent were available to us, there would be some consideration. We just don't have some of that. That disparity was evident repeatedly on Tuesday, as the Americans used their speed in waves, and the Canadians had nary an answer. No need recapping all the gory details, but one goal may as well be the instructional video on this horror show. We take you to late in the first period when Abby Murphy, more on the agitating one later, fed a sick backhanded pass to Hannah Bilka, all alone in front of the Canadian net. It was all Murphy, who sped past a pair of Canada defenders as though they were pylons, scooped the loose puck in the corner, and made the feed that Bilka would bury. Canada built its roster to combat the Made in USA version, and this is where we're at. Built to dominate. tired of seeing the Canadians dominate on the Olympic stage, claiming gold just twice, once in Nagano in 1998 and again in 2018 in Pyeongchang, the Americans came here bursting with confidence. "We want to be dominant," American center Taylor Heiss said earlier in the tournament. "We train every day for this. We're here at the Olympics and we're here to dominate." If that was the mission, it's now accomplished. In fact, never before has the U.S. unleashed a display like this at the Games. This was the 11th Olympic clash between the two foes, Canada entering with a 7-3 record and a 27-24 edge in goals. The contests have defined themselves as hard-fought, tight-scoring tests which have invariably made for compelling viewing. Prior to Tuesday's throttling, the U.S. hadn't beaten Canada by more than one goal since Nagano, when they won 7-4 and 3-1. And never has either team recorded a shutout in head-to-head meetings in their Olympics. Shots on goal were eye-popping. 11-4 after the first period, 17-5 at one point in the second. It got to the point where the pro-Canadian crowd here cheered when a player in red carried the puck in their own end with any measure of speed. For further insult, Canada's top starter, Anne-Renee Desbiens, got the hook after she raked the fifth puck out of the net, behind her following an American goal. The Canadians had their confidence shaken, something Ryan acknowledged. "The bounce back then will put every player to the test." "I think we're as hungry as it gets," said veteran Brianne Jenner, who wore the C in Poulin's absence. "We'll do everything we can to learn from this." But are there excuses? We'll argue that there are not many excuses in a defeat this one-sided. But some will lean on the absence of Poulin, who Ryan hinted prior to the broadcast could return from a lower body injury. Next up is the finale of group play on Thursday, and then quickly swinging into quarterfinal action 2 days later. So what now? "It's a tough one," Ryan said. "We know the stories that will be written. We've got to make sure we're managing some of the outside noise. You've got to look internally. I think it's good we have a down day on Wednesday, so we can talk and meet." There's a picture of USA's forward Tessa Janicki, and she's number 22, wearing a red, white, and blue uniform with a blue helmet. And next to her is Canada's forward Blair Turnbull, number 40. She's in a red, black, and white uniform. And they have their heads together with their hockey sticks to the ice. And right behind them is a referee with his hands on his knees looking down at them. Photo by Alexander Nemenov via AFP via Getty Images. That story was Americans Hand Canada Worst Defeat in Olympic History by Rob Langley. The next story is Lily. Liberal backbencher PM Mark Carney owed Jamil Jivani apology by Brian Lilly. A Liberal MP called Conservative MP Jamil Jivani a Nazi sympathizer and implied Donald Trump was Hitler in the House of Commons last week. So much for the Team Canada approach, where we all work together to solve the problems emanating out of Washington. John Paul Danko, who represents Hamilton West, Ancaster, Dundas, was speaking on proposed changes to the operations of the House when he went off on Jivani. Quote, "We have the Conservative Party of Canada's own Unity Mitford, who is attempting to freelance negotiations with the American president right now," Danko said. Unity Milford was a British socialite who became close to Adolf Hitler, even moving to Germany and living there at the start of the Second World War. In calling Jivani Unity Milford, Danko is calling his fellow MP a Nazi sympathizer, and by extension saying Trump is Hitler. It's a thoughtless, idiotic comment from anyone, let alone a member of Parliament. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Sun on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Giovanni's friendship with J.D. Vance opens doors. Danko made the comments while Giovanni was in Washington, D.C. for meetings with top American officials. Giovanni is a longtime friend of U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, ever since they attended Yale Law School together. Using that friendship, Giovanni was able to get meetings with Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, numerous senators and members of Congress, and even Trump. When he arrived back in Canada, Giovanni had an hour-long debrief with Dominic LeBlanc, Prime Minister Mark Carney's point man on Canada-U.S. relations. Quote, "Doors were open for dialogue about how Canada and the U.S. can work together at a time when pessimism gets most of the media attention," Giovanni wrote in the National Post upon his return. "Certainly, my 15-year friendship with the Vice President played a key role in opening those doors. But what I found across the board was optimism about how we can move trade negotiations forward. I was particularly happy to hear key insights on how we can make progress on specific sectoral priorities, and the importance of strategic diplomacy." In his statements before going to Washington, and his statements since, Giovanni has said that on a file this important, he believes in a multi-partisan approach. Country should come before party. Giovanni offered help to Liberals, but was rejected. He's right on that, but unfortunately the current Carney Liberal government, or at least parts of it, don't see things that way. Giovanni offered to assist Carney and his team last fall. He offered to make himself available in any way that would help the country. Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre gave Giovanni the green light to work with the government to try to get tariff relief from Washington, to try to get a deal. Carney, though, didn't want that help. The Liberals rejected the idea of embracing Giovanni and his offer. Prior to Danko calling Giovanni a Nazi sympathizer, Carney and various other Liberals, including senior ministers, mocked the Conservative MP and his trip. Melanie Joly claimed that despite traveling to Washington, Giovanni has never raised the issue of layoffs at the Oshawa GM plant that affected workers in his riding. It's a false claim, but one she was willing to repeat again and again. Carney, meanwhile, was equally dismissive, implying the whole trip was a media stunt. Quote, "We have extensive contacts with the U.S. administration. Constant contacts with the U.S. administration. Mr. LeBlanc gave a briefing to Mr. Giovanni, who I don't believe is the trade critic for the opposition, certainly not the Minister of International Trade, nor the Prime Minister," Carney told reporters last week. Connections are important in politics. Giovanni's personal friendship with Vance clearly opened doors. It's about more than law school. Giovanni was at and participated in Vance's wedding. Politics is about people and connections, and finding ways to get things done. It was a foolish move for Carney to reject what was clearly a genuine offer of help from someone who has made connections. What is worse is that the Liberals mocked it and degraded it with their insults. It's not just backbencher Danko who owes Giovanni an apology for calling him a Nazi sympathizer. It's Carney and his entire team. Shame on them. That story was Lily. Liberal backbencher PM Mark Carney owe Jamil Giovanni an apology, by Brian Lilly. The next story is Columnists, Kinsella, Anti-Semitic Epstein-related conspiracy theories moving into the mainstream, by Warren Kinsella. In October 2017, someone calling themselves Q posted on the 4chan message board. Q, who claimed to be a government official with a top security clearance, wrote that a secretive cabal of powerful pedophiles was trafficking in children. QAnon, as it came to be known, was, and arguably still is, the most influential conspiracy theory in the century. It would go on to acquire millions of members worldwide, spur multiple crimes, and play a considerable role in rightist populist politics. Like most conspiracy theories, QAnon was crazy. Its adherents believed that Donald Trump would lead the end times battle against a coven of Satan-worshipping leftist child molesters. The reverse actually turned out to be true. Trump himself has been linked to a group of rich and powerful creeps who, while not necessarily leftist or Satan-worshipping, were indeed good friends of deceased child rapist Jeffrey Epstein. No one likes to admit that QAnon was right about a shadowy circle of pedophiles. But they kind of were, and the evidence is everywhere to be seen. Scores of powerful men have been forced out of their well-appointed positions when their names appeared in Epstein-related emails, or in photographs snapped at Epstein's many social gatherings. Prince Andrew is no longer a prince because of his association with Epstein. Britain's government, led by Keir Starmer, is teetering near collapse due to its links to the man. And Trump himself is rapidly losing support from members of his own party because of the perception that he is hiding Epstein-related truths. QAnon's anti-Semitic roots. So, QAnon wasn't entirely wrong about a powerful pedophilic group operating in secret. There was. But QAnon's had another core belief, one that was and is a lie, that the cabal was Jewish. Virtually from the outset, QAnon was avowedly anti-Semitic. One of the movement's leaders, Ghost Ezra, actively promoted Adolf Hitler, called Jews fake, and declared that only white Europeans were the true chosen people. Another leader, called Negative 48, insisted Jews were puppet masters who killed children in dark rituals. And one of its Canadian leaders, self-professed Queen Romano Didulo, apparently believed that Jews like George Soros ran everything. Jeffrey Epstein was born to a Jewish family in New York in 1953, but there is no evidence whatsoever that he was ever a practicing Jew. His crimes have been condemned by every Jewish leader and advocacy group in existence, in fact. But that hasn't stopped QAnon, or the Jew haters, of course. Anti-Semitic, Epstein-related conspiracy theories are being increasingly mainstreamed, a worried watchdog notes. Mainstream media taking cues from QAnon. The Anti-Defamation League human rights group, for example, has said that anti-Semitic content has exploded online because of the ongoing Epstein scandal. This rhetoric has surged across the political spectrum on both fringe and mainstream social media, streaming platforms and shows, said one ADL spokesperson. There has been a demonstrable increase in rhetoric that promoted anti-Semitic and anti-Israel conspiracy theories about Jeffrey Epstein. Chief among these is the unproven allegation that Epstein was an operative controlled by the Israeli spy agency Mossad. That claim, incredibly, has even been referred to in the New York Times. Quote, "The long-standing theory that Epstein was connected to Mossad." The Times of London, quote, "Was Epstein a Mossad agent? New files deepen mystery over Israel links." And, of course, Al Jazeera, quote, "Disgraced U.S. financier has links to Israeli intelligence services." This sort of reporting and commentary isn't just irresponsible and harmful. It is the sort of madness that also gripped the followers of QAnon. Like QAnon, some media have attempted to weave various threads. Epstein's Jewish birth, his relationship with former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, his co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell, daughter of disgraced media magnate Robert Maxwell, a Jew, into a ragged new anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. Extremists like Max Blumenthal, on the left, and Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, on the right, have thus seized on Epstein's alleged Jewishness to promote anti-Semitic themes. And they're getting traction, including at the recent conservative Turning Point Conference, where J.D. Vance spoke, and where the U.S. Vice President notably refused to condemn anti-Semitism. Conspiracy theorists, you see, don't need much. If there is the tiniest grain of truth to a claim, they'll build on it. And that is what they're doing now with Jeffrey Epstein. Q, wherever he is, would approve. There is a picture of some documents that were released with the Epstein files. There are two pictures of Jeffrey Epstein. They look like his booking picture, because one is just a head and shoulders looking forward, and then the next one is his side view. And in the looking forward one, he is kind of smiling, and the background is just plain gray. The same with the one where he's facing away. Photo credit goes to John Ellswick via AP. That story was Kinsella, Anti-Semitic Epstein-Related Conspiracy Theories Moving into the Mainstream, by Warren Kinsella. In an unrelated story, border cops intercept life-size child sex doll. Kingston man charged, by Brian Towey. A 57-year-old Kingston, Ontario man has been charged after Canada Border Services Agency officers intercepted child sexual abuse material, including a life-size child sex doll, at Hamilton International Airport on February 3rd, the government said. A parcel from China containing a life-size doll categorized as child sexual abuse and exploitation material was recovered by CBSA in late January. CBSA notified Kingston Police's Internet Child Exploitation Unit to further investigate. Suspect caught in Kingston. Kingston Police nabbed the suspect near Barnsley Crest, I don't know what Crest stands for, and Acadian Drive, where he was then taken to police headquarters and held for bail. He was charged with possession of child sexual abuse and exploitation material, import child sexual abuse and exploitation material, and failed to comply with long-term supervision order as a result of previous child sexual offense convictions. CBSA and Kingston Police say the investigation is ongoing and they may lay more charges. The CBSA says any information about suspicious cross-border should be reported online or at 1-888-502-9060. Recent border bust. Border cops all over southern Ontario have been busy too. Another Kingston man was charged as CBSA shattered an alleged ring to move millions in cocaine and meth across the border at various entry points across the province. According to the CBSA, Operation Meridian was a targeted 60-day operation in southern Ontario. Officials said the goal was to disrupt the import and export of illicit narcotics through commercial channels at ports of entry across southern Ontario. Quote, "We have had remarkable success in intercepting smuggling efforts of dangerous narcotics destined to cities throughout the country," said Michael Prozia, Regional Director General, Southern Ontario Region, Canada Border Services Agency. Quote, This outstanding work helps keep Canadians safe by stopping harmful drugs from reaching our streets and communities. The success of Operation Meridian highlights the effectiveness of coordinated efforts between the CBSA and law enforcement partners. There is a picture of the Thousand Islands Bridge to the United States. It's a border check, and there are many lanes that go to the bridge that has red or green lights above each lane. So red would mean you stop there, green means you can go. So I'm assuming that you would have some kind of pass to be able to get in the green lane. And there are several cars lined up. Photo by Majin Culture via Postmedia Network. That story was Border Cops Intercept Life-Size Child Sex Doll. Kingston Man Charged by Brian Towie. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Sun on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The next story is PM Mark Carney billed taxpayers 94 Gs for in-flight catering on one trip by Brian Towie. While Canadians continue to struggle with rising grocery bills and as lineups for food banks get longer, Prime Minister Mark Carney flies in style, even racking up a $94,000 in-flight catering bill for a short flight. Records recently released by National Defence show Carney's flights drew sky-high expenses, with the priciest being a 4-day Rome trip in May that cost the Canadian taxpayer $93,780. Conservative MP Philip Lawrence asked in the House of Commons about the expenses, which include a 2-day trip to London at $52,610.23 for in-flight catering and related fees, as well as a 3-day trip to Brussels at $49,000, $43.76. Taxpayers were billed another $16,842.67 for in-flight catering costs for a 3-day trip in May 2025 to Washington, D.C., about a 1 hour and 45-minute flight from Ottawa. National Defence notes the costs aren't just meals and non-alcoholic beverages, but also for catering handling, storage, cleaning, international waste disposal, airport taxes, security costs, and administrative fees. A history of liberal spending. This isn't the first time the government has gorged itself on taxpayer money. Governor General Mary Simon and her colleagues racked up nearly $100,000, later adjusted by the Department of National Defense to $80,000, in catering bills during flights to and from the Middle East in March 2022. Parliamentary committees heard the money went to beef Wellington and pricey garnishes, among other expenses. The hearings prompted a report recommending more fiscal oversight and fewer contingency meals for flights. Quote, in her first year of travel, the Office of the Governor General spent over $2.7 million on travel, reads the report. Over $2 million was spent on 4 international trips, with the remainder being spent on domestic travel. That same year, then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, former Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, and 58 others racked up $57,401.56 in catering bills during a 7-day trip to Europe. During another European visit, Trudeau and 47 others billed the taxpayer $46,018.07. Food bank usage takes off too. Meanwhile, food bank usage in Canada has reached historic highs, with almost 2.2 million monthly visits last March, a 5.2% increase over the previous year, and a doubling of usage since 2019. Daily Bread Food Bank says in Toronto alone, 1 in 10 people make use of a food bank, which works out to 4.1 million yearly visits. And it's not just for the poor and unemployed needing help anymore. The group notes the demographic of people who rely on food banks is changing too, with nearly 60% of users being college or university educated, and 50% have full-time employment. Quote, that social contract that we used to have of you get an education, you get a job, you work hard, you'll be fine, is not the case anymore. Daily Bread Food Bank CEO Neil Hetherington told CTV. There is a picture of Prime Minister Mark Carney. He's arriving at the West Block of Parliament Hill in Ottawa, and he's wearing a black suit with a black tie, white shirt. He's holding a black, it looks like a laptop bag. He's getting out of a black SUV, and there is a man in a black suit holding the door for him. Photo by Hyung Cheol Park via Post Media Network. That story was PM Mark Carney billed taxpayers 94 Gs for in-flight catering on one trip, by Brian Towie. The next story is Ontario man pleads guilty in truck crash that killed Olympic figure skater, by Brian Towie. An Angus, Ontario man charged with dangerous driving, causing death and bodily harm in an August 2023 crash that killed Olympic figure skater Alexander Paul, has reportedly pleaded guilty before the trial was to begin. CP24 reported that Sukhwinder Sidhu, 31, admitted to both counts Tuesday, accepting responsibility for the crash that killed the new mother in Melanchthon Township, Ontario, and injured several others, including her young son. Toddler was involved in crash. Sidhu pleaded guilty 2.5 years after OPP said he was speeding in a transport truck in a construction zone on County Road 124 and crashed into the back of several vehicles, including Paul's, who had her 10-month son in the back at the time of the deadly pileup, the outlet reported. The court heard Paul's vehicle was hit so hard it was sent crashing into a ditch, killing her. Paul's son was taken to hospital with a broken leg, along with 3 other men in other vehicles who suffered life-altering injuries. Investigators say Sidhu entered the construction zone going nearly double the posted 60 kilometers per hour speed limit before slamming into a lineup of 6 vehicles. Crown prosecutors say Sidhu ignored the signs to slow down. Trucker worked 26 hours. The Crown said Sidhu had been working for 26 hours, and the truck was recorded traveling near its 108 kilometers per hour top speed. Skating star. Paul was a decorated figure at the Mariposa School of Skating in Barrie, with her ice dance partner and husband, Mitch Islam. Seen at the 2011 Canadian National Short Dance, the pair represented Canada at the 2014 Sochi Olympics. Sidhu's sentencing. Sidhu's sentencing hearing is scheduled for mid-May, when it is expected he will hear victim impact statements. There is a picture of Alexander Paul and Mitchell Islam. It was taken at the 2014 Sochi Games. They are on the ice skating, and Alexandra is wearing a beautiful red lace skating outfit, and her husband Mitchell is holding her up. She's doing the splits in the air, and in the background you can see the 5 rings that is the logo for the Olympics. Photo courtesy of Post Media. That story was Ontario man pleads guilty in truck crash that killed Olympic figure skater, by Brian Towie. The next story is Hunter. Is evil Ghislaine Maxwell trying to hold Trump and Clinton hostage? By Brad Hunter. The next story is Hunter. Is Evil Ghislaine Maxwell Trying to Hold Trump and Clinton Hostage? By Brad Hunter. Ghislaine Maxwell truly is the scuzziest woman on the face of the earth. The disgraced 64-year-old British socialite has once again done her star turn in the filthy sewer that is the labyrinth known as the Epstein Files, named after her old paramour, billionaire pedophile Jeffrey. Late Monday, the House Oversight Committee released a video of the convicted sex trafficker repeatedly invoking her Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination when asked about her links to Epstein. Max takes the fifth. Quote, "I would like to answer your question, but on the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer that question or any related questions," Maxwell said when asked if she was a close friend and confidant of the sicko. The Horn Dog Publishing heiress is serving a 20-year sentence for sex trafficking underage girls at a camp in Texas where the red carpet is threadbare. She set the table for rape and even took part. Maxwell's lawyer sniffed that his client would only sing if U.S. President Donald Trump granted her clemency. A free pass for sexually trafficking young, vulnerable girls. Criminal? No. Stupid? Yes. My old friend Barry Levine, who wrote a bestseller on Epstein and Maxwell, told me he doesn't believe Trump was involved in any wrongdoing. Stupid? Yes. Criminal? No. The same goes for Bill Clinton. Maxwell said she would offer the committee reasons both men were, quote, innocent of any wrongdoing. Yet Trump has long claimed that he red-flagged Epstein, who killed himself in 2019, as his, quote, evil second banana Maxwell. According to the New York Post, the president called the Palm Beach police chief in 2006 and thanked him for investigating Epstein. Michael Reeder said Trump was, quote, one of the very first people to call when people found out that Epstein was being investigated for sex with girls as young as 14. Trump told the cop that Maxwell is evil and a focus on her. Quote, "Thank goodness you're stopping him. Everyone has known he's been doing this," Trump was quoted as telling Reiter, adding, "People in New York knew Epstein was disgusting." Cops in Florida began receiving tips about Epstein's twisted predilections around 2003. State prosecutors were quick to torpedo law enforcement initiatives. Epstein eventually pleaded guilty to Florida charges of soliciting a minor for sex in 2008 under a controversial non-prosecution agreement. Like an onion, the Epstein probe becomes more pungent with each layer discarded. One victim was 9 years old. On Tuesday, it emerged that former private school teacher Epstein had one victim who was just 9 years old. Quote, "You read through these files, and you read about 15-year-old girls, 14-year-old girls, 10-year-old girls," Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin told reporters. "I saw a mention of a 9-year-old girl today. I mean, this is just preposterous and scandalous." Raskin added, quote, "I saw the names of lots of people who were redacted for mysterious or baffling or inscrutable reasons." Further afield, a sultan and a pervy former prince have become further entangled in the Epstein rat trap. In London, King Charles is indicating that there will be no support for his idiot brother and Epstein bestie Andrew Mountbatten, Windsor. Andrew's idiot family. Buckingham Palace has now vowed to cooperate with probes on both sides of the Atlantic. The king has voiced his profound concern and offered his, quote, thoughts and sympathies to the victims. That scream you just heard? That's Andrew being thrown under the bus. Things are also not looking great for his former wife, Sarah Ferguson, the one-time Duchess of York. It emerged that her daughter, Princess Beatrice, once offered advice to get Fergie back in Epstein's good graces after calling him a pedo. B suggested telling the press that Epstein had, quote, done his penance and was moving on with his life. Remember, these are all absolutely contemptible people, each with their own motivations, and spendthrift Fergie has already been bailed out by the sex maniacs several times. Epstein, Maxwell, and their friend Harvey Weinstein even attended B's Victorian-themed 18th birthday masked ball at Royal Lodge in 2006. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Sun on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Belongs in maximum prison. Fergie said in an unearthed email, quote, Beatrice and I had a discussion and we agreed it was important. Of course it was. For about the 500th time in her life, Fergie was broke, needed dough, and Epstein would save the flame-haired wastrel from bankruptcy. Again. Dimbulb B also played a starring role in facilitating Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the parasite formerly known as Prince's disastrous 2019 interview with BBC Newsnight. As we noted, these people are disasters as human beings. Back to Ghislaine Maxwell. In a celebration of bipartisan agreement, we'll leave you with committee member Representative Ro Khanna, Democrat, California, thoughts on the matter. Maxwell, he wrote on X, quote, refused to answer a single question about the men who raped underage girls, saying she would only do so if she received clemency from President Trump. Evil? You bet your ass. She must immediately be sent back to the maximum security prison where she belongs, the California Democrat added. There is an undated picture of billionaire pedophile Jeffrey Epstein and U.S. President Donald Trump. Donald has his hand on Jeffrey Epstein's shoulder behind the back. Jeffrey is leaning his head towards Trump. He's salt and pepper colored hair, brown eyes, and he's smiling a really creepy smile. And Donald Trump is there in a striped shirt, pink tie, and black suit jacket. His hair is not as orange as it is right now, and he's smiling also a creepy smile at the camera. Photo by Getty Images. That story was Hunter. Is evil Ghislaine Maxwell trying to hold Trump and Clinton hostage? By Brad Hunter. The next story is conservative MP Mike Dawson praised for rejecting pay raise, by Brian Toey. New Brunswick conservative MP Mike Dawson says he can't in good conscience accept an annual 4.2% pay rise, while Canadians struggle to pay for the necessities of life, a move that has yielded praise from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Quote, Dawson is showing real leadership and proving he is a true champion for taxpayers by turning down the upcoming MP pay raise, said Franco Terrazzano, CTF's federal director, in a news release. It takes courage to stand alone and do the right thing, and Dawson is showing real guts to turn down this pay raise. Here's something Dawson needs to remember. He may be alone on this issue in the House of Commons, but thousands and thousands of taxpayers across Canada are standing with him. It's not about the money. Dawson wrote in a Facebook post that he did not get into politics for the money, adding he has a successful business that his sons can now manage while he works in politics. Quote, in my campaign to become your member of parliament last April, I discussed many issues on your doorsteps, and I truly appreciated every one of those discussions. On Election Day, I was humbled to be your choice to represent our region in Ottawa, he said. Now, it turns out that I and every other member of Parliament in Ottawa, will get yet another pay increase on April 1 of this year of approximately 4.2%. One discussion that I did not have at any door, not a single door, was a pay increase for myself or for all federally elected politicians in Canada. Dawson addresses House of Commons in letter. Dawson requested in a letter to the House to, quote, make the necessary arrangements with the Payroll and Benefits Administration to ensure he doesn't get the money. Quote, at a time when everyday Canadians are struggling to keep up with the rising cost of living, I cannot, in good conscience, accept this pay increase of nearly $10,000, which every member of Parliament is set to receive, Dawson wrote. It is frankly distasteful that parliamentarians are set to receive a raise, while the working man and woman in this country hasn't seen a decent raise in decades. Canadians strongly agree. Canadians overwhelmingly share Dawson's view, according to the CTF. A 2025 poll conducted by Leger, and released by the CTF said 79% of Canadians opposed a parliamentary pay raise, with 59% strongly opposing one. There is a picture of New Brunswick MP Mike Dawson. He is standing next to a door, and on the wall next to it you could see there's a gold plaque with, I'm assuming it's his whole name, but all you can see is Dawson. And then there's a red fire alarm pull right there. And he's wearing a blue suit jacket over a white shirt. His arms are crossed in front of his chest, and he's wearing a big black watch. He's got short brown hair, and he's slightly smiling into the camera. Photo courtesy of Adam Harras via Post Media Network. That story was Conservative MP Mike Dawson praised for rejecting pay raise, by Brian Toey. The next story is Mandel. Could questions about a forensic psychiatrist win Alec Minassian a new trial? By Michelle Mandel. Toronto mass killer Alec Minassian is appealing his 10 murder convictions and is banking on new controversy over a key Crown witness to deliver him a new trial. How enraging that would be if that's enough to thrust this merciless killer back into the courts. At a motion to be heard by Ontario's highest court, Minassian is seeking, quote, fresh evidence from prosecutors about Dr. Scott Woodside, the prominent CAMH forensic psychiatrist who testified that despite his autism spectrum disorder, the incel killer knew it was morally wrong when he careened down a Yonge Street sidewalk in a rented van in an attempt to kill as many women as possible in his April 2018 van attack. Superior Court Justice Anne Molloy accepted Woodside's expert evidence that Minassian can't be found NCR, or not criminally responsible due to his autism, though she was critical of the psychiatrist's lack of note-taking during his interview with Minassian. Woodside has had some trouble with the courts. Since his 2021 testimony, though, Woodside has run into some trouble with the courts. A judge's 2023 decision challenged his reliability as an expert. He was found to have copied and pasted a portion of his report from one dealing with a completely unrelated offender when supporting the Crown's motion to find Calum Nettleton a dangerous offender. As a result, the court found the Crown expert's report, quote, incorrectly diagnosed Mr. Nettleton with disorders he did not have, falsely attributed gang associations and criminal offenses to Mr. Nettleton, mischaracterized his index offense, and misstated his risk of reoffending test scores, according to Minassian's lawyers. When confronted with the glaring errors, the psychiatrist dug in his heels and tried to justify what he'd done. The presiding judge rejected Woodside's expert opinion, after finding he was, quote, unable or unwilling to fulfill his duty as an expert as a result of professional credibility bias. That was followed a year later by the Court of Appeal, finding Woodside's testimony in Nettleton raised concerning red flags, including an approach to his reports that was careless and unreliable. The court ordered a new hearing on the appropriate penalty for another dangerous offender, Richard Hasen, for whom the psychiatrist had recommended an indeterminate sentence. He may not treat his important responsibilities as an expert witness with the care and diligence that his duty to the court requires, warned Chief Justice Michael Tulloch. Ontario prosecutors received directive. After that decision, all prosecutors in Ontario received a directive from the Ministry of the Attorney General about Woodside and his use as a forensic psychiatrist by the Crown. Were they advised not to use him as an expert anymore? No one will say. Minasian's lawyers want to know what exactly was in that directive, results of any internal reviews about Woodside, and any supporting information about him, since one ground of the mass killer's appeal is that Molloy erred when she found Woodside could fulfill his duty as an expert forensic psychiatrist. His appeal lawyers complain they were told the information was, quote, privileged and, quote, irrelevant. The prosecutors argued that Minasian's team has all the decisions relevant to Woodside, and there's nothing being hidden from them. Application leads to dead end. Quote, this application leads to a dead end, they wrote in their written argument filed in advance of the motion. They confirmed a case-by-case review of certain cases involving Woodside had been conducted by the ministry, but there were no other concerns reported. Undermining Woodside and removing his evidence wouldn't change the NCR result, the prosecutors argue. One of the experts called by the defense, Dr. John Bradford, agreed with Woodside that Minasian was criminally responsible, and the other, who found him NCR, was completely rejected by the judge. In 2022, Minasian was handed a mandatory life sentence with no chance of parole for 25 years on 10 counts of murder and 16 of attempted murder, with 2 of the injured dying years later. He wanted to be known and talked about. He saw no way to accomplish that except through a spectacular act of violence, Molloy would say in sentencing the unrepentant killer. He knew death would be irreversible. He knew their families would grieve. This was someone who knew exactly what he was doing to achieve the infamy he craved. Should a careless forensic psychiatrist be enough to win his first step toward overturning his convictions? That story was Mandel. Could questions about a forensic psychiatrist win Alec Minasian a new trial? By Michelle Mandel. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the February 10th issue of the Toronto Sun. Your reader has been Melanie Guralnick. Thank you for listening.